For anyone who's applying for any sort of cannabis license in Massachusetts, you have to hold an informational meeting. This meeting is for us to tell you what our plans are, to hopefully quell any fears that you have in this very nascent industry that is new to all of us, to address how we feel that we're going to be able to help the community, and then to offer up the table for questions and answers after that. It is not supposed to be a meeting debating whether Prop 4 should have passed and whether cannabis for adult use should be legal or not in the state or the town, because, excuse me, that's already been voted on. So I'm going to back up a little bit. I had about 20-year history in working in emergency medicine. So much of that time I was writing prescriptions, controlled substances, opiates, highly regulated industry, and then jumped into another highly regulated industry, distilling. So currently at the distillery down there, we're governed by the TTB, which is federal, which won't be governing this, and by the ABCC, which is a state-run institution that basically gets money from us every month in taxes to make sure that we're doing stuff right. So initially, the Cannabis Control Commission was under the wing of the ABCC, and it just recently cleaved off, so it's its own institution now. So I have a background in these regulated industries. We're sort of the yin and the yang here. Michael has an MBA from Columbia in mostly marketing focused and has done a lot of IT stuff. He's successfully started and sold a tech company 15 years ago, and then has been consulting and doing some side investing since then. But we both bring very different things to the table. The reason we're here today is that many months ago we started talking and talking about the cannabis industry here and the pros and the cons of it. I actually voted no on Prop 4 because I didn't think we were quite ready. And after months of speaking with our chief of police and dealing with the Cannabis Control Commission and speaking with a Mass ex-senator who's on that commission, who has a history in opiate abuse and was on that task force, and just trying to really figure out how we can usher this industry in responsibly. Michael said, what do you think? Would you be willing? And after a lot of pondering, we kind of decided to jump in. And I think for us, the idea is that it's here, it's legal, the state has mandated that licenses be issued, and we want it to be done responsibly. We want it to be done by a company that has local roots instead of somebody coming in from British Columbia or Colorado. The state has no concerns where the company's coming from. They want a viable company. So I think the purpose of this whole entity is obviously we want it to do well as a financial business, but there's also an awful lot of opportunity for the community in this industry as well. It's the only industry I know of where a part of your revenue goes straight to the community. It's not your profit, it's your revenue. So at 3% of what we sell will go directly to the community. So we've built a good team, which is important because you don't want an institution that's going to come in and then not be viable 3 years down the road, which is what's happening in Colorado now. Partly they're over-issuing licenses. So it's Michael and myself, and then we have 3 or 4 people. We have somebody from Colorado who has been in the industry from the get-go out there, who's going to be consulting genetics, help setting up our grow. We have another person from Colorado who has been in the industry since the get-go also, who set up the largest grow, excuse me for sitting here, in Colorado of 200,000 square feet, who's on board with us, and he's going to be advising how the buildings are set, how the irrigation's set up. We've got some wonderful marketing people to augment Michael's skills, and we are starting to raise a bunch of money. So we have a signed host agreement with the town that we've gone over, and we can sort of hit the high points of that. But let's go over what the meeting is here. I think hopefully we'll answer a bunch of your questions as we go through this. If anyone, has something urgent, throw up a hand, shoot me or something, and we'll try and address it at that time. Otherwise, afterwards, we should have a bunch of time. Good? Do you want to say anything? Okay. So here we go. These are the things that we want to talk about. The first thing about is sort of what we're doing, what licenses we're looking for. The second one is how to keep it secure, and that is mostly state mandated. The third one is preventing diversion to minors, which is an interesting topic and probably the biggest one I'm concerned with. Community impact, beneficial, and if there is any adverse impact to the community. Nuisance issues, are we going to be hosting parties in the middle of the night type of thing. Adult use facts from the state, and then we'll have a question and answer period. So, Massachusetts is not unique, but not many states allow you to have 3 different types of licenses. The first one is a cultivation license that allows us to grow. Depending on demand and what we can put on that spot there, this is up at Pine Tree, north of here. We are looking somewhere between 10,000 and 40,000 square feet. To put that in perspective, an acre is a little bit over 40,000 square feet. We may not be able to get that much space up there, and there may not be that much need for the product in town, so that will dictate a little bit. Part of that will be indoor, part of it will be greenhouse, that is sort of 3-season, and we hope to have an outdoor component to it that's significant. Focused on IPM or permaculture. There's really not an organic thing in this. We can talk about branding later, and hopes building a Berkshire brand with the help of some other local growers as well. We intend to manufacture on that site. That the industry has changed an awful lot in the last decade, and there are different components like those pens that have their cannabis concentrate oil in them. There may be lotions. The medical community uses different things like honeys, and so we tend to control what we're making, keeping it pesticide free and focusing on quality in the manufacturing component, and then we plan on having a retail store. The state has, in the laws, allowed for what are called cafes, which would be the consumption of cannabis on site. We would not be applying for one of those. When I speak with Chief Munson, that's sort of his biggest concern, is what happens when people go to one of these cafes and they eat a cookie and they eat their friend's cookie, and then 2 hours later, if they're driving home, or half an hour later, they're driving home and they're halfway home, they realize they can't drive.
We've actually delayed the licensing of those, I believe, for another 6 months.
So that I watched a great Huffington Post roundtable at Harvard on cannabis, and the attorney from Colorado said, his line was, it's like an edible drug, you'll get it in 2 hours. But that is a concern. I think it's legitimate. There's a difference between consuming something and being in your house and not being able to function versus doing something at a cafe and going home. And the West Coast logic that I've heard on that is that when people sort of understand what they're doing, it may be more appropriate. Security, most of this is mandated from the state. I'm going to turn around and excuse my back. It's a very onerous process. Each person that is allowed into the facility is licensed, has a background check, a quality check. This is workers, and they're only authorized to go into certain parts of it depending on what their job clearance is that is vetted from the state. There's secure rooms, certain criterion for locks. The outside perimeter will be lit, not obviously blaring out. So the marijuana products will not be visible from any part of the street. There are emergency policies and procedures in the case that somebody steals something, and these are things that we will be speaking with the police department about. Every component of any transaction, any movement in these buildings is videoed real-time and held for 90 days in high definition. So 30 Wellness said they were spending about $10,000 a month on video storage. So every piece of the puzzle, from the seed to the sale of the plant, is monitored. Every bag that is packaged is done on a scale in front of a video camera that can be looked at anytime. Okay, so this is sort of addressing the youth issue, which to me is a big one. And there's a lot of sort of promising data on this, but the state certainly dictates how some of this is done. A lot of this is redundant on security, so that, first of all, kids aren't allowed in. Anyone under 21 is not allowed into these into the stores or anywhere on the property. So again, they won't be visible to the public. The state is mandating certain labels and child-proof resistant packaging, warning statements. The education to the community and outreach program is something that we're going to be active in. And we, with our post-community agreement, we agreed to hosting 3 meetings a year. My guess assumption is that we'll be doing more than that. And again, I'm working with the state to try and figure out if we can develop a committee within the industry, not regulated by the state, funded from within the industry, that can help address these issues as well. There's been some good data from Colorado. I don't know, I'm not a fan of, and I always say this, and the guy repeated it last night, which made me feel good. When I was growing up, all the ads on drugs were, this is your brain on drugs, and there was a fried egg on a frying pan. Does anyone remember that? And so the Colorado guy said that, you know, we started with stuff like that and it didn't work. And what we go to now is like, we understand, but these are the consequences and the risks, and you have to be responsible and you have to go about it in the right way. And I had that discussion with my 15-year-old, and it's a hard one to have, because I tell him that, you know, he's adolescent, so his frontal lobe's not developed, and that is the big thing for kids not getting involved in this early on, is they don't have a developed frontal lobe, and so you can have some cognitive issues if you start smoking a lot of cannabis early. The problem is they don't have a developed frontal lobe, so they can't really assess the fact that it's a risk to them, so it's a bit of a conundrum. But like, trust me, just don't, you know, the longer you wait on these things, the better off you're going to be. So we're going to be very active in that, working with the state and with the local police and the schools. The director of security we will have. So in the end, there has to be a good symbiotic relationship with who is running this and the town. I think that we've had that at the distillery. We try and support, you know, the fire department and the police department and the land trust and, you know, myriad of different organizations when we can. So our plan has us starting off with at least 10 full-time employees, and that's in, you know, here in Sheffield. Plus, we will be building out the Pine Tree property, making it look quite nice. The state has a 17% total tax that is placed on this. The town can levy a 3% tax, which is optional, which we are doing with the town. So again, that's 3% of sales. So even if we break even one year, it's still 3% of what we sold. We're expecting 30 to 50 people to come in a day. The reality of it is probably that people will be coming from out of the area. Again, we're trying to build a brand of the Berkshires and grow nice, clean, Berkshire-grown cannabis that people will come for, and we're going to have a heavy genetics component. So our hope is that we will bring people in, and those people will in turn buy gas locally, and they will, you know, go to the local markets and stores and stay in local hotels. So I think it should be a boon for tourism. Again, we talked about the education and community outreach for the schools. Program, and oh yeah, so that was supposed to be programmed and scheduled in consultation with the town. So the agreement was that we would speak with the town, the police department, maybe the rescue squad, I don't know, whoever has input, the community, and then address those concerns and hopefully focus the attention where it needs to be. Much of this is going to be funded by the state as well, and Governor Baker recently announced that he's going to put, before any of this revenue comes in, $2 million into an educational fund that will help with that as well. So the nuisance is, I think the first one is addressing any odors that might be part of growing. So the greenhouses will have carbon filters on them and exhaust. It's part of that is with the smell. There's also a very interesting thing. There's hemp is, people are growing legal hemp now for stuff. Maybe it's not legal, but they're growing different things. And these plants are all females, the ones that you want for a cannabis flower. And if they get pollinated from another plant, from someplace else, they can basically get ruined overnight, and they become seedy and they're not worth anything. And so that's another reason to have filters in all the greenhouses. Equipment containing limited access areas will sequester noisy procedures and include barriers to eliminate noise. I think probably we're going to have an air compressor to run a machine, and that's going to be the noisiest thing. The walls and fencing to obstruct lines of sight. The nice thing about this property is it is 4 acres and it runs east-west, so it starts on the road, and the facility, the buildings will be in the front. The outside greenhouses and growing will be in the back, and we'll have fencing and probably shrubbery or trees along the sides that will help any view on that. But the back part of it will be the outside part, and that's the part you might see from the road. But that will be plants, and I think state law kind of dictates that we need fencing around that. Signage and lighting, I think we are 100 square feet in this town. There are state and also some common sense things about how, and what you can have on that sign, and how you can market to the public. Oops, sorry, I missed one, didn't I? This one? Sorry, going backwards.
Top arrow. Top
arrow? Okay. He's a tech guy. Municipal participation will ensure any and all possible nuisances will be addressed by the applicant. Okay, so adult use facts. There, and this is based off of, so I have a medical background, and everything had to be a randomized controlled blinded trial for it to make any sense. So we didn't want to go to the cannabis website and say, see, look, it says that it's perfectly good for this stuff. So this is, these are all reliable sources. No increase in youth use. Colorado actually had a decrease in use among youth once it was legalized. No increase in traffic fatalities. Reduction of opioid fatalities. They're also in some of the studies by the panel represented at Harvard that I watched the other night showed that there were actually up to 42% decrease in use of opiates among people who were treated with cannabinoids. Unfortunately, one of the things that I was very interested in pharmacology was trying to figure out a weaning protocol off of methadone onto opiates, or onto cannabinoids, because I was in the ER, I would see people who were on methadone for years and years and years and never would get off of it. So again, one of the big picture things that came out of that meeting that I watched from Harvard was that they really, it's still classified in a way that you can't study it thoroughly. So a lot of the input was there's probably a lot more potential than we're seeing. We just haven't been able to study it. Expanded economics, jobs, and taxes. So these are the studies to show that there's a reduced use. Legalization curve here. This is a traffic fatality. And this is one of the concerns with the police department is at the moment, and that is going to change because there's going to be big money, so a lot of biotech firms are working on it. There's really no good roadside test to determine if you're testing positive because you smoke pot at your friend's house half an hour before the accident, or it was 5 weeks ago. And so they're working on ways and testing to figure out if you're acutely affected or not. But as the guy said from Colorado, the attorney, a lot of this data is noisy and they're trying to work through it, but what they found in the consensus is that there really has not been an increase in traffic mortalities from adult use. Again, this is a reduction in opiate mortality rates. Economic benefits. So there's been a lot of stuff written about the benefits of it, and the taxes, the jobs. There are a lot of towns that have opted not to allow these stores in their communities, and in Colorado, and what they're finding is the towns next to them have them, and they're just missing out on the revenue from it anyways, and they're trying to backpedal from that. There was an article in the Times last weekend about it was a cotton plant in Missouri that had, the mayor came in and they landed some company to come in and grow cannabis, and it was, quote, godsend for him, and they turned the town around financially. So, I'm not saying we're going to turn the town around financially, but I think that we've had, recently a few properties come off of the tax docket, and this is, a good way for us to bring some income to the town, and we're going to bring it in responsibly. So we should open. Do you have anything? So I think let's open it up to questions or comments, and again, let's try. For us, it's really about being good stewards of the community and trying to do this. It's going to be done here, so our thought is that we want to do it responsibly.
How you doing? You and Mr. Wells?
Well, yes.
My name's Kevin Hines, lived in Sheffield since the early 80s. Is this already a done deal?
Is it a done deal? Legally, yeah. So legally, the
store's going to go on Main Street? The people got nothing else to say about it?
Well, the legal time, as all of our filings, our permit filings are in, and the state voted for it, and the town voted for it, so according to our attorneys,
so yes. You've got a permit, you're going in on Main Street, selling your product?
Correct.
Okay. One, I can't believe that I'm standing here in the town hall with my fellow citizens and our cop right over there, and we're talking about putting in an industrial marijuana plant in Sheffield. There's a number of things you kind of breezed through up there that I got a sticking point with. One is, you were talking about your 15-year-old and trying to explain to him, he don't want to be doing this, smoking the grass.
Right.
But you say up there on your little highlight that you're going to reduce the youth getting into grass.
So I didn't say I was going to reduce it. I was saying that studies from Colorado have shown.
I don't believe anything out of Colorado. I don't think that if you open up a marijuana store on Main Street, that your product is not going to find its way out into the kids in this community. Everybody's 15-year-old, and then it's not going to find its way into the schools.
So I think that the data coming from Colorado is state-driven. So it's reliable data.
Okay.
And then I will tell you that currently any 15-year-old that is interested in getting cannabis can get it already. So the issue for me is, and I don't want my kid eating at Dunkin' Donuts every day, and I don't want my kid drinking beer. So he's 15. So there's a significant time window where it is not a good thing for adolescents to be doing these substances because their brain is developing so quickly. So they have a time frame of vulnerability, and the stuff is out there already, and alcohol's out there already, and kids who are hell-bent on getting it are going to get cigarettes and alcohol and booze.
We got it back in the 60s and 70s.
I understand that. So
probably some of the folks.
So my
hypocrite for saying what I'm saying now.
No, I don't think it's
the stuff that was around back in the 60s and 70s.
It's different.
The hippies and everybody else was getting into is nothing like what's gonna be coming out of your
Correct.
store.
You're right.
The stuff you're gonna be putting out there is rocket fuel.
It's
If kids
different.
get hold of that at a young age, they're not gonna be worth a dime for the rest of their lives.
Well, I think the point is that
If they make it.
okay, so the state,
I got one more thing, then I'll
Okay.
shut up.
That's
You're
all right.
talking about no driving under the influence test for grass. Yeah, the marker for that is how deep you end up in the woods when you're riding along smoking that bone.
well, the NT,
That's my 2 cents worth.
all right, so I will comment on that, and that there's,
People can't do anything about it anyway.
there's good data about fatalities in car accidents, and then the NTSB also released some data showing that people who are drinking, when they get impaired, tend not to realize that they're impaired, and people who are high on cannabis tend to realize they're impaired and pull over.
If you're out there loading on the grass that's around now, you're not gonna know where you are.
I'm not passing judgment on that.
I think you're wrong about a lot of the statistics in Colorado, because a lot of the things that you showed us there were not true.
Well,
Number one is the homeless rate in Colorado has
Yeah,
gone
Colorado's a mess.
70% since, in the last 5 years, since they've legalized it. I think the state of Colorado kind of regrets legalizing what they do because they didn't know what they were getting into.
I think
And in fact, the fatalities in traffic accidents are up, not down.
okay, so that's not from data we pulled. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a couple points. Number one, the product that we're going to have is going to be more expensive than, because it's going to be taxed, because it's going to be, I'm saying,
You guys smoke it?
there's,
You
there's,
smoke your stuff?
we're
I
not,
don't think that's relevant, honestly.
I'm just curious.
but there's no problem with access. Kids can all get it, and they're going to be able to get it.
So
They're
we
not,
should just relax and enjoy it.
No, I think
No.
there needs to be a strong educational component on it that's community focused.
And as far as the tourism coming into town, you're gonna have tourists from Albany, Catskill, Hudson, East Hartford, Springfield, Holyoke. People are gonna be coming that you might not wanna see on your streets to get grass.
Well, again, it's going to be expensive. So my guess is that the average sales in these stores is high. So it's
You'll
not.
find something to do on the way to get the money.
Yes, sir.
What positive impact is there to Sheffield by doing it? What positive impact, aside from the 3%?
So jobs.
No, jobs?
Jobs.
Okay, that's, okay.
So
Positive impact for jobs would be selling the pot.
there would be growers, there would be people doing compliance, there would be people in the store, correct? So there would be revenue generated from that, so there would be the 3% on that. There would be taxation on the property improvements, and there would be
Have
increased.
you done any research on how we'll de-evaluate real estate?
I know that Colorado's real estate has skyrocketed.
So why do you suppose that is?
Because people are in there for an industry that's generating billions of dollars worth of revenue for the people in the state.
It's all in the legislature, and it's not going to be a trickle down anything. It's not. You're in it to make money, obviously. But you know, 20 years ago we preached to our kids, just say no. Now we're just saying, oh, we're just walk the street.
So 20 years ago, the Just Say No campaign was dropped because it didn't work. Okay, so I think
just give up.
no, that's the whole component of the education on it. So, it's a bit of a moot point because we've addressed all the requirements for the town.
Understood.
B,
It is because the state of Massachusetts voted it in.
and so did this town
Yeah.
in the mid-60s.
Good.
So B, if
Should
it
we still
wasn't,
be jailing people?
I'm sorry?
Should people still be going to jail for smoking pot? I mean, it's illegal. It's
They're going to be
illegal.
even more now.
You think so?
Absolutely.
Well, let's see if you're right. You know, you seem to have a grip on the future, but all I know is in my life, a lot of people have gone to jail for this. You know, there's 50 million people who smoke pot in this country. Are they all nuts? Are they all wrong?
I tell you
No,
what,
I'm not suggesting they're wrong for life. I'm suggesting, is this the right thing for
I know what you're saying.
All I'm asking. We fought for 2 years on a Dollar General store that we couldn't agree on because we didn't want it in Sheffield. Now it's in Sheffield, it's probably the biggest place in town. Now we're saying, okay, now we're gonna just.
I'm not saying everybody that's.
What positive impact does it have on the town of Sheffield?
So I just want to respond to your comments. I'm taking it you're against this. The good news, at least from the research that exists now, is that there has been no increase, actually a decrease in underage usage. The research also in Colorado, as it relates to traffic accidents or traffic fatalities, has shown that traffic fatalities have gone down. There has been some uptick in accidents. So we're not saying that now this is legal and it's all great. This is real research, and the benefit to the town really is not just economic from a jobs and a tax standpoint, but from the other businesses that that will benefit from people visiting.
The other thing I'd like to say is that if it ends up a half mile up the road in Route 7, on Route 7 in Great Barrington, that is a friendly town to this, right? So say that's where we decided to go.
Isn't it, are you doing it up on the lot that the Conservation Committee bickered forever on doing something there when they tore down the pine tree?
And that's all been settled. So that's been through commensurate fill. It's all been approved by the DEC. So just devil's advocate, if it did move half a mile north into Great Barrington, there would be no difference in access to anything in Sheffield. People would take 30
I'm not suggesting there is.
People
I'm suggesting what positive impact
let me address that. So if it happened to be half a mile up the road, then people would drive 30 seconds further. If they were coming from Sheffield, they'd come back to Sheffield. However, Sheffield would not have that 3% that maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to put into its community education fund. Great Barrington is not going to say, hey, let's sponsor some education for the Sheffield schools, and we'll pay for that.
Law enforcement of Sheffield be increased because of this?
The way that works is if there is an increased documentable need because of this, then we are beholden to cover that.
And that will be absorbed in 3%?
No, that's a different. Okay, sorry.
Just a quick question in terms of we're surrounded by states where this is not legal.
Correct.
What does that say for your sales? I don't.
So technically, we're not marketing to those states. Technically, we cannot deny people with an out-of-state license that are of age, so we will have to make that sale. Again, as I said, I've been meeting with Chief Munson quite a bit, and I was in the office today. He couldn't be here tonight, and I said to him, hey, do you think that maybe we should go down to the state troopers barracks in Connecticut and just introduce ourselves and say what we're doing? He said, that's a great idea. He's out of town for a little bit, but when he comes back, we're going to go down there and talk to the lieutenant and just tell him, what we're doing and how we're trying to do it.
So you have no responsibility. I mean, if the person's legal,
right. So we can't, just like a store in New Hampshire that sells tires can't say you can't, buy tires with us and not pay taxes and bring it back over the border. Yes.
I know I didn't vote for this, but the town did overwhelmingly, if I remember correctly. And I know that where you're positioning this is off of Main Street in the sense that it's up a ways. You've got to, you're just not going to walk to it. You're going to have to drive to it. I also know that if we are going to have this, which legally we are going to, unless the town takes certain action, which is very onerous, I know that I'd much rather have local people and have you be one of the people that's doing this. You have done an outstanding job with the distillery. It's a beautiful building. I've never heard any complaints about how you conduct your business. So while I agree that we're all going to have to get used to a number of things that for years we've been told we shouldn't even be thinking about, I'm very pleased that if this is going to be our first marijuana business in town, that you are associated with it. Second of all, are you planning to open a medical dispensary component?
In the beginning, we are not going for a dual license. It's sort of tricky in the literature reading it how that's established and how much redundancy you have to have. So we are going to just go for the adult rec. However, that being said, we will certainly grow medical strains, and there's some evidence showing that people do have some apprehension because of the stigma going to medical facilities, and you have to get a card. So for instance, I can't go into Theory Wellness in Great Barrington. So there's a bit of an idea that people will go to adult rec where they don't have to get a card and get registered and just pay for a medical grade marijuana. So there's a lot of really interesting, cannabinoid, CBD, terpene type stuff that we will be working with, and hopefully working with the state with their research person to figure out how we can take advantage of the beneficial pharmaceutical components of it. So thank you for your comments. Yes?
I second everything Renee said, including the fact I didn't vote for it. But my question, being on the school committee of our 5 towns and having the concerns related to the very easy access to drugs and alcohol for our students, relates to 2 things. You answered the medical marijuana, but I don't know if in Massachusetts you have a background in medicine, but will you be hiring people who will be able to say the breakdown of this particular edible or this particular marijuana is good for, it's got this type of composition, and if you want to use it for pain, use this, whereas this is really, you want a good high, use this.
So there are, I guess we have not fully addressed that, but I will say that in order to be and the term is a bud tender, be a person that sells cannabis, you need to go through an educational program. And I think that there are a lot of, or that most people now are quite savvy as to what they're looking for. And so generally speaking, there's the THC that is psychoactive, and then there's the CBD that isn't, but there's a myriad components in between, and they all have different effects. So I believe that anyone that would be working there would be able to say, this is the non-psychoactive component stuff, this is the psychoactive component.
What is the CBD good for?
May I just finish?
Oh, I'm sorry, of course.
How would you be able to go about ensuring that you would be able to get, are there any certifications that you deal with in Massachusetts?
The state mandates training on that.
Okay,
so and then actually the state has one of the biggest, so Colorado's one of their biggest problems is pesticides on the cannabis. And they are testing that strictly in labs. And so anything that in Massachusetts is going to have sort of a secret shopper program where the state will come in and they will buy something, and if you say it's 13% CBD and 0.5% THC and they test it and it's wrong, my guess is after a few of those violations you get shut down. And that's all independent lab tested, by the way. So we're not applying for a lab license because legally you can't test your own product, which I think is good. So the answer is yes. I think that there's, for me coming from the medical background, I think there's a lot of good that is going to come from this, and I'm excited to work on the non-psychoactive or blend components of it. And so how far we dive into having somebody that is specially trained in that, I don't know. To answer your question, out of the meta-analysis of the 1,000 studies that were done in that roundtable last night, the biggest benefit was shown with intractable pain, with muscle spasm, especially related to MS, and with seizures. And statement with everyone compiled together, the 4 panelists, was essentially, there's probably a lot of other stuff. We haven't been able to test it the way we'd like to, that will come out of it. And look, we're completely cognizant of the fact that 15-year-olds shouldn't be smoking cannabis, and they also shouldn't be drinking, and they also shouldn't be smoking tobacco. So again, it's we're going to work strongly with the community and the schools, and rely on the good experience, that the learning experiences Colorado's had in programs that have worked for that and programs that haven't, and try and build off the ones that have worked. And the gentleman from Colorado said he thinks it would be great if they worked on some ad campaign competitions to see who could get the best ads for sort of educating kids on how to deal with this and how to deal with the exposure.
All right, and the second part of the question is, if you've got, somebody who is a repeat customer,
correct,
but a repeat customer who's coming in, it's very clear, it's way more than personal consumption. Basically, coming in with what looks like a shopping list. Where are you violating rights where it looks like it's a concern of a resale, a supply?
So I think that's happened in Colorado.
It happens in California
where people will cross California just became legal rec in January. California produces 12 million pounds a year, 3 million of it is sold in California. So forever they've been the breadbasket of cannabis, right, northern coast. And I think Colorado has, and it's actually driven the price down in Colorado because people will buy a bunch and move it across the border. And I believe that there are limits on how much you can purchase.
So there will be
very specific legal limits.
Yes, and I will say that Connecticut just voted. They didn't feel like they had the control on. They weren't ready to legalize it. Adult rec, so it's legal. Medical marijuana is legal in Connecticut, but adult rec is not now. But Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New York are all probably going to be legal in the next few years.
Just a quick question, and then maybe a little longer one. The quick one is, when you talk, you're going to manufacture a product, and the discussion that's been floating around is just weed, but are you going to also do edibles?
We will do edibles, and we will do, as I said before, probably some honeys. And then a big component of sales now are those cartridges. So that is it's a concentrate that is very concentrated, but they're smaller doses given each time. And that's a large component of sales.
Okay.
So
can I do my second bite of the apple then? Right?
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I also didn't vote for it on either the state or the local program, but I'm aware that we're going to have it around here somewhere. It's only a matter of time, and I'd much rather see us dealing, with someone that I know and can trust, which you represent from, like Renee said, just the track record that you've had from both when you were on the other side of the mountain and since you've been over here. One of the things I'd ask you is that I also am a member, like Bonnie, of the district school committee. And one of the things we have is that you cannot bring this product onto our campus. And I hope that you would also figure out how you could work with us in terms of, it'd get really messy if you have too many people that say, stop at your place first. They're going to the school program tonight to see the kid sing or something. And they come on the campus and somebody rats them out and we tell them to get off or something like that. I mean, I don't see we're going to change that. And that's pretty much true of, I think Berkshire Hills has the same policies, and pretty much any place around here, you cannot bring that product on the school campus.
My assumption is that they can't bring a bottle of beer on the campus either, right? Which makes sense. So, look, this is a new industry for all of us here. there's been some experience in other states, and it's an industry that the state and the town both voted for. So I am completely aware of the fact that there are many people that will have very strong feelings against it. Many people have very strong feelings for it. And our intention is to, A, make something that is financially good for the town and us, but also that comes into town with a sense of belonging to the town and trying to address the issues. I mean, I'm in the post office every day getting my mail, and I'm getting my gas in town, and I'm not based in Colorado, and I pick up my phone. So if there's an issue, the chief knows where I live, and I'm not going to say there are never going to be issues because, knock on wood, we're super careful at the distillery. We serve much smaller servings than we legally can, and I'm very rigid with all the staff there. And knock on wood, we haven't had an issue, but certainly a lot of restaurants and bars do, and those things happen. And I think it's going to be, it's not, as the saying goes, how you, if you fall down, it's how you get back and how you handle it. So we want to be town players and work with the town and do it in the best way that we can.
I guess as an example of how you might work with us on that is, do you think you would be willing to, for example, put signs up, basically telling people don't take your product to the school campus or something like that? Because
I don't know if that's almost like putting a sign up like don't bring your.
Well, the issue I have is that why I'm concerned about it is that if we know about it,
right?
Okay, somebody says, Mary's dad's got a package of weed that he just bought at your place. Okay, right. We have a liability that we have to get them off the campus. Right. And you're going to do that too many times before you're going to have an awful lot of, interesting kind of situations on your hand when you start throwing adults off your campus.
There's definitely
parents and school kids.
An inherent responsibility, community-wide and with us. And so there's this organization, this is what I posed towards the state commission, is there's an organization called 1% for the Planet. And I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but it's a charity that goes all towards eco-sensitive stuff. So if you look at Paul Newman's products, or if you look at Patagonia's products or something, 1% of the sales is going towards the environment. And I've been talking to the state and saying we should have, and they sort of have something like that on the docket, but we should have something that is self-governed in the industry, that maybe you get a sticker that goes on the door that says, you're part of this group that understands that there are concerns and issues with this and you're trying to be socially responsible. So I am, as I said, I have a 15-year-old kid who, tells me that a lot of people he knows are smoking pot or drinking, or they do the Juuls, and so it's, I remember being 15 and around everything, and I think it's the way you approach it and how you work with the education and then the funding behind it. So, yes, sir.
I voted for legalization. I know a lot of good people, they like to take a joint, have a hit, relaxes them a little bit, they kick back. They're very responsible, very intelligent people. I also seen the damage that it's done to other people back when I was younger, that we didn't call them burnouts for anything.
Right.
They smoked, they burnt out, they're toast. They're not overly productive to society.
Right.
And we all know this. Now, I voted for it because it never should have been viewed as an opiate or a harder substance. People were jailed with harsh sentences that I don't think were called for. But I also did not vote for it to be an economic engine or for greed to try to capitalize on it. I was hoping it would be a little more upstanding, objective views that it was legalized.
Right.
So, and in Colorado, yes, the people that got in first have made some serious money. You're seeing it collapse on itself. Overproduction. It's not going to on my estimation, going to be an economic driver for too long. Once Connecticut legalizes, New York legalizes, you won't be pulling in all those people from other states. And farmers are great at producing product.
Right.
So that's why I'm a dairy farmer, and I'm getting paid because we're just too damn good at it.
So I think there's two parts to that. The first one is that we understand, and when you look at those states, there's a precipitous drop over about 4 years of wholesale pricing, and that is part of our business model. So Michael is a great brand guy, and in the end, after 4 years, you need to have a brand. So our game plan with one of the people from Colorado is to bring in brands from other states that we can then sell under, a Sheffield, Berkshire grown label to the other 100 or so dispensaries in the state, understanding that our price per pound is going to drop way down as we grow. And I agree. I think it's a shame. This has become, and Ted, you can probably speak to this more, this has become a industry that is governed by the big guys because that's where it's going to go. It's going to go to RJR and Monsanto and all those people, and they have dictated the laws on how it's set up so that it's hard to grow without starting a company and raising a bunch of money. And the people who are, what's that? So it's
pesticides.
Yeah, so we understand that, and it's it's something we're planning for in the model, and I think the cards are stacked against very small producers.
I also found it interesting that you would not say one way or the other or whether you smoke marijuana, seeing how it's legal. I mean,
I don't think it is relevant.
I think it's very, very relevant. If you're going to promote a product, I think
I don't think it's relevant whether
we're not staying behind it.
I don't think it's relevant whether I drink or not, or whether I eat at McDonald's or not. It's my life, and
that's true. But I just find it interesting that you're going to promote a product that you won't even admit to using or not using.
No, this just isn't the forum for it. It's not about that.
Yes.
I think it is, actually.
Chris, can you speak a little bit more about the host agreement that you signed with Sheffield? You spoke. I don't know if there's a. I don't know anything about the host agreement. Okay, so I don't know whether you have.
Did you get a copy of that?
No.
So the host agreement there's somewhat of a template of those that have been formulated before, and then the towns. Does anyone from the town or able to speak on this, or I just keep going forward? Basically, we were given a draft from the town. It's a business contract, essentially, and in that agreement, there are certain clauses that if we move to another town and agree to pay that town 4%, then Sheffield has to get 4% too. And I mean, I think for me the big things are the 3%, the outreach to the community for education, and then to meet the other requirements that the state mandates for these licenses.
Okay, so I assume this is a public agreement.
Correct.
We could get it because I know you said to someone that that if there's an uptick in police requirement and they have to hire another officer or such, so we could look to that agreement to see if there's any offsets or other potential community expenses.
Correct.
And then I'm assuming that if anyone wants to, they can come to a select board meeting and ask what the select board is going to do, such as making clear that if you can't smoke on town property with cigarettes, you can't smoke on town property, and looking at the select board with
No, I think that's a state. I think
so
that's a state law. State law. You can't.
We can also look to the town
Right?
to see.
You don't know? Off the record, hiding in the back.
Right.
Okay, I believe that's a state law that you can't, and that's the same in California and Colorado, correct? You cannot smoke in public.
Are there any limits to the number of these businesses that can exist in a single town?
Well, that's an interesting question, and there has been scenarios, in particular in Colorado, where they've issued too many licenses, and there's one part of Denver that they call the Green Mile, where everyone is competing for that revenue, and places are folding. So, and we were, honestly, we're going to ask to have an exclusive agreement for a number of years here, because it's a huge financial investment that we need to raise money for. And the problem is, if you have 2 retail shops in this town, it doesn't mean that you're selling 2x. It means that each store is selling half x. And what what we want is longevity, and to be able to build a brand. But so, from a business model standpoint, absolutely. If you start throwing in a bunch of stores, then it doesn't bode well for them.
So did you get the exclusive?
No, we didn't.
No,
we didn't pursue that aggressively, and it didn't seem like it was. We're hoping that we're in the forefront, and we're going to do such a great job that it works well for us. Yes.
Chris, Terry Calgill from the Berkshire Edge. You said earlier something was said about being a done deal because the town of Sheffield did vote in favor of this ballot initiative that legalized adult rec cannabis. And it's my understanding that no town can simply say we don't want them if they voted for it. Is that your understanding?
My understanding is that if the town votes for it, they need to, and it's tied to the number of liquor licenses they have. So they're obligated to issue a certain amount of licenses, certain number of licenses. And the option of that is to build a moratorium and get a reversal of the town's voting on that, which we've been at this for months, so we're before that. So it's, so essentially, as I understand it from 2 different attorneys with us, we're kind of ahead of the game and okay in Sheffield.
But you still have to go through the local zoning permitting process here in Sheffield in order to do.
We've applied for all those permits.
Yeah. What exactly do you need? Maybe Rhonda knows.
We have applied for a retail store permit and a processing along with that retail, so we can process what we grow, and then commercial greenhouses.
All right. And what is the property zoned as?
It is, I believe, general business.
All right. And that's a permitted use?
It's a by right use.
It's a by right, so you don't need a special permit or anything.
And then, so that's the town, and then the next step is to the state. Right. So then the application has.
You need a license from the state to do.
You need a license from the state. They need to come out and inspect. They need to make sure everyone who works there, everyone who owns a significant portion of the business has passed a background query check. And then there's, continuing, I don't know what they call them, educational requirements per annum.
Do you need separate licenses for cultivation, manufacture, and retail?
Correct, 3 separate licenses.
Yes. 2 questions. What is the length of term of that community agreement? And is it renegotiable at some point?
I believe it's 5 years.
And so
5 years.
Okay. And so at that point, one could petition you for a 4% or an 8% or whatever. I mean, that's one of the things that could happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think that 3% would do the first year?
We're going to need to sell a few $1 million, maybe not first year, second year, to make it worth it.
By a pound or by the ounce?
It's $3 million an ounce. It's gonna be good. Yes. What's happening?
Another kind of new area of questioning. You're basically growing this both inside and outside, is that? Okay. Not that I'm familiar with the process, but basically it's the buds that you use in the process, right? Okay.
Yeah.
The plants themselves, is there food value in there where they can be?
Well,
Bob can feed his cows, right?
Well, that's that's where I was going with this, is that we have the largest dairy farms in the Commonwealth of Mass.
So I'm going to put this
Can those stocks be used for
I'm
something?
going to put this into perspective. We are, looking to grow around a couple thousand pounds, right, a year. And my guess is...
That doesn't feed many cows.
My guess is there's a couple thousand pounds of, stems that are going to go in the compost bin. So I compost everything down here. I compost 2,000 pounds every other day. So it's not a lot. The other issue with that is that you have to dispose of it in a certain way, and people can't get into it, and even though there's no THC in those components of the plant, so I think it would be very onerous. I thought of the same thing. I thought, well, we could use the stems to make fiber and do something with it, but I think that the federal law is going to mandate that we have to process it in a way that it's all going to get shredded and go into the compost and get reused.
Wow. Cannabis paper.
Cannabis paper.
Grain, maybe grain.
It's actually no joke.
Yeah.
A couple questions, what's your timeline for opening?
Our timeline is to have the application in May 1, when they are accepting applications, and hopefully put some plants in the ground this summer. But, that might be ambitious, the way things are going.
And then as far as hours of operation go, maybe not so much on the store side, but like the growing side, is that going to be like 24/7 cycle?
It won't be 24/7. The indoor, so the growing of cannabis during the longest light phase is 18 hours. And then for the whole flowering component of it, it's only 12 hours of daylight. So 7 to 7. And the greenhouses now have light deprivation, so that they actually have black tarps that roll up and over them, because if you're trying to have a flowering plant, which is where the money is, right, in the bud on the flower, if that gets exposed to light outside of those 12 hours, it will turn back into the vegetative state and keep growing and not flower and produce the THC or CBD.
So people will be working 7 to 7 roughly? Ish.
Yeah, probably ish. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So are you saying that in the greenhouses there won't be artificial lighting used?
The greenhouses get augmented, and that depends on the season. So they will have augmented lights. Massachusetts is pretty good on putting limits on electrical use for these facilities. So for us, our goal is to use as much of the ambient light as we can. The other thing that we have in our budget is some money for solar there as well. There are everything I grow is organic. So everything at the distillery we grow organically. My orchard at the farm is organic. So I try to use this full circle. We send our stillage to Pine Island, where they make energy out of it, or we compost it. And I think we're probably going to end up using our spent water that is non-contact, so it's clean, and figuring out a way to truck it down there so we're not using more water down there. So for me, the whole growth thing is IPM, or integrated pest management / organic, with a sort of permaculture approach to the land.
And how many greenhouses are you planning on building? And how large are they?
We have in the permit application up to 20,000 square feet, but I don't know, it's going to be somewhat site specific on that. Yes?
You mentioned wholesale. Is wholesale allowed, and is there a limit as to?
Wholesale would be from license to license. So if we have an abundance and stores in Boston want to sell, you know, sun-grown Berkshire County cannabis, we can sell to another store wholesale. We can't, you know, if you're having a party and you have a lot of buddies over, we can't sell wholesale to people.
Right now, I'm just wondering about the traffic and your capacity, is that gonna grow to absorb in that end of the business?
Our hope is that we sell everything we grow retail because that's where the margins are. But if we end up having extra stuff, it may get processed into concentrates and sold that way, or if, you know, if we end up building a name for ourselves and have this wonderful product that people really love, it may be that, you know, it's worth selling it wholesale to stores in Boston. And this goes back to the building a brand down the road and the importance of that when the wholesale price drops. Because if you don't have the ability to spread out, it's going to be tough to keep the numbers up. Yes, sir.
Where's your retail outlet gonna be?
On that spot up there.
Where?
Do you know where the pine tree was?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, up there.
Okay. I was just thinking next door to the park shop.
Okay, well, thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you for the information.
Okay.